Famous. So welcome to Ross Hill. My name's James. My wife and I own this business. We started by my mum and dad as a bit of a hobby on a vineyard on the other side of Orange back in '94, and then we sort of got serious about it in 2008, and we bought this place. This is an old apple and cherry farm. We're still cherry farmers as well. That orchard out there, and we've got 4 others are cherry orchards, and they sort of complement this business because they come off just before Christmas, where grapes come at autumn time or late summer, autumn time. So we do about, before all the craziness of 2020, we do about 30,000 cases a year. So we're one of the larger wineries of Orange. Export to 5 countries, sell wine all around Australia. But really, what we're passionate about is you guys coming and visiting like you did in 2020 from the June long weekend onwards. You locked 5 million people in the state. Sort of Orange and businesses like these have sort of been the beneficiaries of it. It's been really nice actually, because Orange is a beautiful place, and it has 4 seasons. You're getting season number, I guess, 2 in the year, or 3, winter. By the end of winter, we're all pretty over it. But this week is terrific actually, and not so much for us here in Orange, but for our friends, our neighbours who live about it's only half an hour north or west. There's a really serious mouse plague. I've seen it.
Mouse plague.
Yeah, it's been in the news, and so we're pretty excited about. We've been really lucky here in Orange. What we think, we have no idea because we don't know what mice's brains do, but they're coming up the hill, and as you come up the hill, it's colder. Okay, so what we're thinking they're doing is they're coming up the hill, back down the hill. But there's a frost, 4 days of frost, so that's going to be very, very good for killing mice, which is terrific. So, look, the other thing that before we go and learn how to make wine, it's sort of a funny time of the year because we've tucked everything away, and I'll show you that. So you just got to listen, unfortunately. At other times of the year, I can sort of poke and show you things. The other interesting thing about this business is that we're environmentalists. We were the first carbon neutral winery in Australia. We produce no carbon out of this business. We mainly do it through solar. There's 38 kilowatts of solar on this roof, and it saves us between 50 and 60 grand a year in electricity costs. So for a family business, it works.
That's a lot.
Doesn't make the wine taste any better or worse. It's just we just don't want to pollute the earth. So come on down and put me out of a job in the next 20 minutes. So what we do normally, guys, is we normally go through that roll door there, but it's freezing and there's really no point in getting cold. And I can sort of explain to you what we do. So wine is fermented grape juice. It's a pretty cool thing to kind of do because, we grow a fruit. The flavour of the wine or the fruit comes from the ground. We ferment that fruit or the sugars in that fruit into alcohol, so that's kind of fun. And then we get to, especially good red wine, we get to drink it for 20 and 30 years, and so that's quite a nice thing to do. The other nice thing for me, I guess, is that we've been drinking wine. I'm only 50, and I look about 70, but we've been drinking wine for a long time, meaning the human race. I'd love if I could have a time machine. I'd like to go back in to see, like lots of people like to go and see the pyramids being built. Well, I'd like to go and sit at the table and drink the wine. I don't think it'd be very good, but it'd be bloody cool to go and do it. So what we do is we grow the fruit. There's some key things there. We've got to keep it healthy. We've got to keep it shaded or light. And mainly we've got to pick it on the right day. That's a really crucial part of that And that's got to do with sugar and acid and flavour. Flavour's the biggest thing. It's like food, you know. Really interested in eating food that's just delicious. You know, I don't really care what it looks like, you know, as long as it's really, you know, a big bowl of pasta, you know, just with pepper and olive oil and cheese and, you know, a bit of chilli, that's, to me, it's delicious. So we pick it on the right day, we bring it up here, and we start the process of making wine. So just out there is a press and basically processing equipment. So we make white wine and red wine differently. With white wine, we get in the press straight away. So what we're trying to do there is we're trying to get it off its skins as quickly as possible. So it's a bag press. The best way, it's like a big long, we call it a coffin. It has a big inflated, a big bag in it that we inflate, and it pushes the grapes against a sieve. And then once those grapes are pushed against the sieve, the juice runs out the bottom, right? But there's no, we want as least skin contact as possible. Best way to describe that process is if you've got a colander or a sieve, put some grapes in, blow up a balloon. The balloon would press the grapes against the sieve and the colander juice would run out the bottom. Same process. Why don't we want skin contact? Because in grape skins is tannin and colour. We don't want white wines to be yellow, we want them to be white or clear, and we certainly don't want tannin. Tannin in red wine, which is terrific because we've got that Roman or Egyptian ham hock, and we're eating it with the red wine, the tannin is cutting through the fat. But in white wine, we don't want that because white wine is great with food as well, but it's also, white wine's one of those drinks that we come home, we might have a gin and tonic, a beer or a white wine. We don't particularly want tannin while we're doing that. So we're getting the juice off its skins as early as possible, and we pump the juice into this big tank farm behind us, or with our premium Chardonnay, we're putting it into oak, okay? And then we're using yeast, either natural, so we don't do anything, or we're buying yeast in a packet, and we're putting those yeast in, and the yeast eat the sugars in the fruit and turn them into alcohol, okay? It's really like an adult's version of the Willy Wonka chocolate factory, really, at the end of the day. And then it's time and balance, okay? And I'll explain that in a second. So the white wine is a juice. It's terrific to drink as a juice, especially like Pinot Gris. Pinot Gris is like this really terrific apple and pear juice. My kids are getting older now, but when they were small, they loved drinking it, you know, up until the point where we said, no, obviously you can't have fermenting wine before you go to school. Apparently there's this place called Docks, and it's anyway. So red wine's quite different, right? So we get that concept of white wine. It's in a tank. Now red wine is the wine that we've been drinking for a long time. It's the wine that people make themselves in their garages, okay? Because white wine is quite technical, where red wine is a bit more rusty, okay? So what we do is we use a crusher and a destemmer out there. We haven't used the press, so we crush it. So the fruit comes in, we crush it and destem it. So we're taking the stems out. The question here is, what do you do with all your waste? I've got a neighbour who's got a compost business, and he's a very smart dude, and he picks up the waste from the wineries around his farm and he puts it into his compost business. We have a waste-free problem, which is terrific. He's making money out of a free product. Terrific, right? So it works. So what we do is that we end up with this slurry of skins, seeds, and juice, okay? We pump it into these fermenters. We've got big fermenters here, but the best way to describe it is in these. Now these only sit inside each other for space, storage space, right? But at vintage time, which we just finished, we lay them out on the ground. And we pump, let's say this one here, we've pumped 4 tonnes of juice, skins and seeds into this fermenter. And what happens is that the juice drops down here. There's a cap of skins and seeds on the top just because it's lighter, right? So at this present moment, the wine is kind of like rosé. That's what rosé is. Rosé is red wine that we've made like white wine, like that description of making like white wine, okay? That's how we get our beautiful colour of rosé, because it's red wine without the skin contact, okay? What I'm about to describe, that same rosé, if you then 3 weeks later make it like what we're about to do, it would be red wine, okay? So this is the bit where everyone thinks we get in with our feet and we jump up and down with our feet. And what we're trying to do, unlike white wine, is we're trying to get as much skin contact as possible, okay? We don't get in with our feet. I guess it's reasonably unhygienic. It's sort of not, because we filter wine and we sterilise and lots of things, but it's mainly for us. Look, for the first 30 seconds, it's terrific, okay? It's great. It smells and squishy, but then it's just hot and sweaty and pretty disgusting. It's really sticky, right? So we get one of these. We stand up on a milk crate and we plunge the grapes and the skins into the juice. Okay, so we're getting as much skin contact. And after doing that for a couple of days, that we've worked out, because we're lazy and this is also hard work, is also really good to what we do is pump over. So we're pumping the skins and the juices. So there's a little pump here. There's a valve at the bottom here. I promise you, somewhere on this there's a valve. And we pump the juice and the skins back over each other, okay? It is the best job in the winery, in my opinion. It's one of the best jobs in the world. I guess why? Number one, as a non-wine maker, I do this job, and you'll understand why in a second. But my brain is telling me I'm a part of a creative process that people are going to enjoy for 20 years. And I do mean that. I get emails and texts and the million ways we can communicate with each other. Sometimes even people call me. That's quite extraordinary. And just said, hey mate, had a 2005 Cab Sav the other day. It was just delicious, right? And that's a really nice thing. It's, making wine for people is pretty irrelevant, really. But we do make it put a smile on people's faces. So the wine has been pumped over. It's this bright, vibrant purple and it marshmallows as it hits itself. So it looks beautiful. It smells delicious. And when it's fermenting, it's blowing off CO2. So you get a bit stoned while you do it. It's just terrific. It is happy time, right? It's funny when I do this tour because sometimes parents bring their sort of teenage kids, and I've kind of got to filter it down a little. But you don't get stoned like buy a pizza gets stoned. It's just hazy, like when this is full and I open it up and well, that's what I do actually. I put my hand in, I squeeze it, and so I'm describing to people what it looks like and why we're doing it. And you actually put your head in and you go, oh yeah. It's a real thing with these big fermenters. While fermentation was going on. So when this is fermenting without any heating, this is in the middle of this ferment is 32 degrees. Okay, so that's natural, right? You touch it and it's warm. Not hot, just warm, right? If you fell into one of those and shut the door, potentially you could go down and drown. That would be number one problem. But you would fall asleep and you would die because there's not enough oxygen, there's too much CO2. But when you've got oxygen and CO2, it's just awesome, right? So we do that for 3 weeks, 3 times a day, 7 o'clock in the morning, around midday, and what we're trying to do is extract all the tannins and colour and flavour out of those skins, right? Main decision number 2. There's lots of little decisions, but main decision number 2 is the winemaker puts his glass into this ferment. Now, unlike white wine, this is not pleasant, okay? We don't really class this as wine. I'll explain that in a minute. And he puts it in his mouth and goes, right, we're going to press it tomorrow. Now, that is a decision that baffles me because it's not like cooking. It's not like, I've got to add a little bit of pepper here because I'm going to eat it in 20 minutes, okay? This is a decision, especially with cream. We've got some wines that are $100. You know, they're regarded as some of the best sort of red blend, Bordeaux blends in Australia. That he's thinking about what's that going to taste like in 10 years, what's that going to taste like in 15 years. It's pretty cool, really, when you think about it. And then we put it in the press. Then we take it away from its skins. We press it as a juice. We put it into tank to settle. And then the next part of winemaking is time and balance. So I'm just going to walk through here and we're going to go and check this bit out. And we bought these rooms to store barrels in them, but they weren't designed for barrel rooms. They were designed as controlled atmosphere rooms. Mum wanted me to take these stickers off, but I do like looking at people's faces when I say this, because everyone goes, whoa, I'm not going in there, you're an idiot. You've just been talking about getting stoned, I'm not walking in there. What they used to do is that they put apples in here, so you don't pick up apples all year round. They suck all the oxygen out, and that's how you keep an apple fresh. There's a few other tricks to the trade, I don't really know what they are, but that's what they are. But for barrel rooms, they're absolutely terrific. Again, we're getting that sensory overload this time of our smell.
That's nice, man.
You can feel it's a bit warmer in here, okay? So we're not heating this room, it's just because it's insulated. But in summer, the most important thing about storing wine, so I get asked this a lot. So if you're at home and you're collecting a few bottles of wine, or you just, you know, you buy some wine, if you come to a place like this and you drink it in 6 months, or you keep it for 10 years, it doesn't matter. Temperature is important. Either a controlled wine fridge is great, but if you don't have that, the most important thing is don't put your wine above the stove, okay? Now you go to people's houses and that looks really cool above the stove, that's dumb, right? Put it on an internal wall, or under stairs, or if you've got it underneath the house. You're just trying to keep the constant temperature. Like 14.5 degrees is the number. But if you keep your wine at 19 degrees, as long as it's not going up to 30, it's going to be okay. Yeah. Okay. So in summer, when it's 30 degrees out there, this is a big fridge. The compressors would turn on, and we would cool this. We would have this. So when I'm doing this to it's hot, you walk in here and it's like, oh, that's really nice. Okay. So time and balance. White wine. So our 20, so I'll just go a little sidetrack here and tell you about working with the environment. I love being a part of Mother Nature. In 2020, I could probably not be so. We were at the end of the worst drought that this state has ever seen. Maybe 1982. There was a bad drought back in the 20s, but they're sort of calling it the worst drought we've ever had, and so the vines were starting to shut down. The reds that you're going to try 2019, which were in that drought, and they were lovely, right? But that was 3 years into the drought. In year 4, they're very hardy plants, but they'd had enough. And then there was this little lightning or thunderstorm that went over the Blue Mountains, and that little lightning bolt hit a place called Mount Gosper in Lithgow, and started the biggest fire that New South Wales has ever seen. And what it did was to the wine regions of, in particular, Mudgee and Hunter, it spewed smoke over, but it came as far as Orange. We were kind of in the grey zone, so we had a bit of a crack because the analysis was sort of telling us to, and it's in my nature, and I'm just not one of those people that just, I've got to have a go. And so what happened was we made some terrific white wines because of that skin contact, no skin contact, but all the red wine we sold 30 cents a litre. Okay, so that hurt financially. We learnt a lot, but again, it is because we got smoke taint. Now, smoke taint is, you know, if anyone ever tries to sell you, oh, it's got this nice smoky aroma, push fire down the road. Now, there is 25% of us genetically who can't taste it. Okay, that's proven, scientifically proven. That's weird, right? Why is that? I don't know, I'm not a scientist. But for the 75% of us, at its best, it's a hard, plasticky sort of harshness in the back of your palate. You know, with all wine, but particularly, I'm a red wine drinker. In particular, red wine, I like that length and that sort of, it's not sweet, but it's this lovely, fruity sort of at the back. At its worst, it is like an ashtray. There is no question about it. It's when we did the big analysis of it, we were like, oh man, it's harsh. So we sold it all, but we're very excited about what we've got for 2021. So time and balance. So time is simple, right? It's not like beer. You can't just ring up the production guy and go, mate, the Melbourne Cup's coming around the corner. I need, you know, increase production by 40%. It takes time. White wines like Sauv Blanc, we can bottle quite quickly in 3 months. But red wine, you just can't rush it. Because if you rush it, you get these harsh tannins that never get better. If you put bad red wine in a bottle, it doesn't magically get better. You've got to put good red wine, good young red wine in a bottle for it to last. Okay? So balance is about 3 things. This is Chardonnay in here. This is the balance is in. So I'm only interested in drinking wines that have been in oak. Look, sometimes when I get really good Riesling, I can sort of change my mind a little bit. Had a couple of aged Semillons from the Hunter. I've got more here. They're terrific, right? But I really like wines that are in balance. Flavour for me is secondary. Balance and structure is very important when I'm drinking wine. It's actually when I eat food a little bit too, to be honest with you. So the balance is fruit, which we've talked about. Acid, so there's natural acid in wine. And why orange is such a good wine-making region. And you know, I'm gonna do a little bit of promoting our region here. One of the biggest wine companies, or Hunter Valley wine companies, is moving their whole production from the Hunter into orange. Okay? Because it is climatically better, but because of climate change, that's also affecting it. But also we get these beautiful, lovely acid because we're cold. It's cold and high. It just makes sense, right? Now we can adjust acid when we're making wine, but the best wines we make is when we don't touch acid. Okay? And then oak. Oak is our input. We all use French oak here in Orange. If you went to the Brossy, you'd be using American oak. Some places in the Hunter use American oak, but it's too strong for the flavour of red wines of Orange. And Chardonnay, you remember, if anyone's a bit older like me, remember back in the 90s and the Chardonnays were just yellow and chewy and horrible because they were making them in American oak was one of the problems with them. So the oak barrel is 3 things. One is the age of the oak barrel. So this is a brand new oak barrel. So it's imparting the most oak flavour that it will ever in year 1. Okay, it makes sense. When we get to year 8, it's imparting no oak flavour. We still use the barrels because it's about balance. All right. We make a red wine called the Griffin. It's a Bordeaux blend. We use only brand new oak. But it then sits, once it's been put in bottle, it then sits in the bottle for 18 months, 2 years before we sell it. Because that oakiness has got to start to chill out before we do it, right? The second thing is the barrel maker, okay? So, strangely here we've got the same barrel makers, but you can see over here, there's all these different barrel makers here. So here's a good example. These are, they're different ages, but let's just say that these were, here we go, we can do it here. So you see this barrel here from Francis Freire? It's a 2019 barrel, it has Chardonnay in it, and up above you can see a 2019 barrel from Saint Martin. Okay, the fruit that's in these barrels is exactly the same. It comes from a vineyard at Nashdale. If you tried those 2 wines, okay, they're quite different. Okay, because they're in 2 different barrels. Same age barrel, but from different barrel makers. The same as wine, the flavour of the oak comes from the ground. It's what the French call terroir. Terroir means the place or the bean. okay, or a bit of earth. I know it sounds a little bit sort of kooky, but we kind of will get into it. So that's the second thing. The third thing is the toast. So you see these codes here. They basically mean medium to light, so they're light grain, medium toast barrels. Okay. So the grain makes sense. It's like your furniture. Okay. The toasting. What does that mean? That's a common question. Okay. The toasting is, I know with this barrel, because I bought a lot of these guys off Francis Free, so he takes me out for dinner and we talk about barrels. I try and move it, away to, French rugby a little bit, but he loves his barrels, this guy. So with this particular barrel, it was, before this lid was put on, it was, you really are going to make wine after this, mate, aren't you? Hey, mate, you seriously
I got your
need
secret.
to be paying me. Like, I'm $2,000 a day for consultancy, mate, right? So what they do is the funny thing about the wine industry is that, I obviously it's my life, but you've got to have some fun. It's just a bloody drink, right? Okay. So what they do before they put the lid on is they lower it over a small fire, which is the offcuts of that barrel. For that particular barrel, it was for 17 minutes and 20 centimetres above the ground. And that's how you toast it. That's how you get that lovely charring on the inside of the barrel. And of course, I say, how did you work out 17 minutes and 20 centimetres? And because he's French, of course, he turned around and said, James, we have been doing this for 800 years. Best answer in the history of the world, right? One, it shows that he's French and more superior than I am, and that I am a convict, and what would I bloody know? And number two, he's right. That's what they've been doing for 800 years, and that's how you work stuff out. That's how our human brain, we've all done things and then done it the second time and done it better than we did the first time, right? So this will be bottled next January, then the red wines go through and bottle in July, September and November, so nearly up to 2 years in oak. We then put it into a tank, we settle it, and we're now getting it ready for bottling. So let's just stay here because we're warm, right? So white wine, to get it ready for bottling, we do two things. One is we fine it. So we put in protein. We mainly use a fish powder product, or skim milk, or isn't it lucky we can go outside? Skim milk or egg whites. Okay, and those proteins are taking that last bit of tannin down. So to put it in perspective, that's a 10,000 litre tank behind that forklift there. Okay, we would use the equivalent of 40. So it's tiny, right? Okay. We're also starting to use some vegetarian products to fine, so that's just a work in progress to make it, I guess, vegan friendly. I don't really know what that term means, but because we're an agricultural product, so there's also a little bit of spider and caterpillar and maybe as well. I don't know, So, we're part of the environment, It's like, beef doesn't come from the plastic supermarket tray, it comes from something. So, and we got to sort of think about that. I'm just being silly here, it's Saturday morning. All right, and then we filter it. So we put it through a filtration system. With red wine, we don't fine the wine because we don't want to take those tannins out, right? And we just filter it. Okay. A guy who's bottled every bottle of Ross Hill from in 1998, it was 30 cases. Up to 2019, it was 30,000 cases. His name's Des. He has a bottling line on the back of a semi-trailer. Okay. He's a terrific guy. He drives the semi-trailer through those two big doors there. We hook with one of those hoses up to the bottling machine. The bottle goes in one end. We sterilise the bottle, obviously. We then put the wine in, and we then use a little bit of sulphur. So on the back of wine, you see a thing called preservative 220. Okay, it's the only preservative that we use in wine. And we use such small amounts, and most boutique wineries like us do that because we're only bottling 5 times a year. Okay, so we're able to do it. And this is quite an important part, I guess, for me. If I went home tonight and drank a bottle of Jacob's Creek, and I'm not having a go at all here actually, I'm very proud of the wine that this country produces at $8.99. It's just terrific. All you have to do is go to Europe, or South America, or wherever, and you get your €2 wine. Sometimes it's terrific actually, it's really good. Other times it's just undrinkable, you know, because they don't, you know, we're a new world winemaking country, but they use a lot of sulphur because it's bottled every day, it's 24 hours a day, and, you know, about millions and millions of bottles, and so it's a bit of a process. So I'm a bit, well, if you drink a bottle of wine, you're going to be hungover, obviously, but, you know, the sulphur knocks me about a bit. And then cap, label, box, stored next door. You guys come along, you buy it, walk out. Hopefully you've had a good time, and then we just, you know, you see those vines out there. We're just waiting for those vines. About another month, all the leaves will drop off. We'll start pruning, and away we go again. And we do the best job we can. But at the end of the day, Mother Nature is a big part of what we do. The climate is a massive part of what we do here. So that's it. You never need to buy a bottle of wine again. You can just go down next autumn, you can go down to Flemington markets, or I've got 2 Croatian guys who come up here and buy both my cherries and whatever grapes I have. They're terrific. You're Croatian. These 2 guys are awesome, right? They make it's like a grappa. Yeah. Yeah, that's it, rakia, right? Bloody horrible, right? I'd like to try a good one. Like I'm sure in Croatia there's some beautiful ones. It's like grappa in Italy, right? You try, or ouzo in Greece, right? You try the cheap stuff and it's terrible, but you try good ones and they're beautiful. But these guys, it's not so good. But at its essence, it doesn't matter. And then what I love about this is that, you know, Italians and Eastern Europeans and Spanish a little bit, and Greeks, they get that produce and they take it home and they get it in their bathtub and they make it into whatever, and and you can do that. Yeah. No problem. The thing, if you're going to see why a lot of it is distilled, so we're distilling it as well, is because to make wine in really small amounts is really difficult. Because remember, white wine's nearly impossible, okay? But red wine, you know, we talked about that skin contact. You know that pot that we saw with 4 tons? That's as small as we do it. And there's a reason for that, because if we go smaller, we don't get that good skin contact. Yeah, okay, so we don't get a great end product, we get a harsh product. So, yeah. So. Well, yeah, it is a science, and a lot of people kind of go, you know, it's scientific and all that sort of stuff. It's actually really creative. And the guy who makes the wine, Luke, you're going to meet Izzy out there. She's just about to finish her university degree, and she's got a terrific palate. It's also about, like it's about having a terrific palate. And it's a whole bunch of creativity in there, you know, because you're sort of creating something. It's pretty cool. And at the end of the day, it's just a drink, you know, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So talking about drinking, you guys need to go and do that. So,
yeah, okay.
So, no worries, my pleasure. Okay.